Oh man. Okay. I'm live. This is my first time going live on YouTube. It's something I wanted to try. I've been testing out streaming on Twitch as well. But yeah, this is oh god, this is not what I want. Okay. Sorry, here I'm doing my my phone here, that way I can keep up to date with chat and stuff. So here, let me okay. Yeah, so sorry, I'm getting used to this still. Yeah, so I have been streaming on Twitch. My name is Elijah Lothmer, as you can tell by the YouTube, the name of my channel. I like to talk about film, I like to talk about politics, and I like to talk about kind of everything in between. I like to talk about filmmaking. I am a filmmaker myself. I'm currently in production on my first feature film. And this is just stuff I'm really passionate about. I'm really passionate about pop culture and how it affects us. And therefore, that's what tends to make these things pretty, political, pretty, affecting our culture as a, society. So I like to talk about those things. And, here I am trying to do it on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, Oh, okay. Yeah. We're gonna talk about that. So, we're gonna talk about Dave Chappelle and just kind of all the shit that's happening around him. So to get into, I guess the first thing I want to talk about tonight is we're going to. First, I should preface this by saying I haven't seen the new Dave Chappelle stand-up special. I like jokes too. But yeah, so I haven't seen the new Dave Chappelle stand-up special. And essentially, I've heard a lot about the content that's in it. We're going to get a little bit more into that. But it seems that some jokes he's told have sparked a lot of controversy, a lot of debate online about, just a lot of stuff regarding the trans community. And, so we're going to get into that. I have seen, his previous specials before this one that he put on Netflix. So I am aware of the jokes he's made. I believe it's funny. I actually really like Dave Chappelle. I think he's always been funny. I think there are times where he can go a little overboard, but I generally do like him. So it's not like I'm not talking about like a comedian I hate. And also, I am not talking. I think that comedy can stray into like gray areas of like what's taboo, what's not. I don't think anything is off the table in terms of comedy. I just think if it really depends on, first and foremost, if your jokes are funny. And then also, from what place, you're telling the joke from. So there's like a really great Lindsay Ellis video about, the film, The Producers. And she talks about essentially, Mel Brooks, doing comedy about the Holocaust and about Jewish, essentially about like Nazis and all that, right? But when it comes to telling jokes like that, telling things, you should be aware of what place you're performing the joke from, who is the target of the joke, who is really important to keep in mind as yourself. I think Dave Chappelle is somebody who funny and unfunny jokes are born in the same cloth. I guess they can be, sure. with Dave Chappelle, I think Dave Chappelle is kind of like, he belongs in my head, he belongs in kind of that like South Park realm of like South Park and Dave Chappelle and like things of that ilk, make thing across the board, anybody, everything. And so we are, it's really interesting. Yeah, sorry. We, yeah, they kind of make fun of everything across the board. And so to get offended at like one thing per se is, I think the reason that people are so offended here is more based on the fact that in a lot of it, he doesn't really seem like he's joking. Like, he does tell some jokes about trans people. Some of them are okay, some of them aren't. But in terms of like when he's actually just talking about it, it doesn't really seem like he's coming from that same place that he was so many years ago when he was making fun of like everybody, right? And so I think that's the challenging thing here. However, I know that in this special he talks about, I know he says, first and foremost, I know he says that trans women are women, and then I know that he says like, I know that he's generally supportive of like trans people individually. Like, I don't think he hates the, trans people. I think he has maybe a general disregard for the trans community, at least the online trans community, because to be fair, a lot of people online are incredibly toxic, and yeah, I think it's, whatever. Search on YouTube, Patrice O'Neill, schools broad on funny. Maybe I will. I want to talk about some stuff first, though. But yeah. So I think I think that Dave Chappelle is incredibly interesting when it comes to this area. So we have had a little bit of misinformation flying around when it comes to the handling of some of the stories around Netflix and this Chappelle special. So one popular story that was going around was a trans employee who had tweeted about their dislike of the special and, not supporting it. Either it's all okay or nothing's okay. No, I think you're failing to see a little bit of gray area, which you kind of need to see for comedy. Like, good comedians can always tell gray area. That's what makes somebody a good comedian, is when they're able to navigate gray areas. Like George Carlin talks about, crossing the line, but even George Carlin had a line that he wouldn't cross, right? So like, no, that's absolutely not true. A good comedian is always aware of like social pressures and social tensions, and they can push buttons, but they must always be aware of that. If you're not aware of that, then you're not a good comedian, because a good comedian is a commentator on today's society, right? A good kid and creating a well-crafted good joke, right? Yeah, no, that's not how blackface works. I don't, yeah, and I yeah, no. Yeah, so now, so granted, I still haven't seen this new Chappelle special, so I can't speak on my opinions on the jokes in the special, right? I know that historically, I laugh. I really do think he's a funny person. And yeah, there's sometimes I think he misses the mark, but whatever. I think that even in his earlier stuff, he's drawn some pretty valid criticism, even on Chappelle's show. I don't know if you're aware of progressive thing where it's like, we've come so far in society that now we're able to go back and do a minstrel show, and people will laugh because of how ridiculous the idea is. And then the network greenlights it, and then they're able to do a minstrel show, him and his other friend, and it's like incredibly like very bad for the black community, right? And And then at the end of the film, Spike Lee hits you with essentially a montage of black tropes and stereotypes and caricatures throughout our, show was in 2003. When did Bamboozled come out? I think Bamboozled came out. Okay, Bamboozled came out in 2000. So this was a few years before Chappelle's Show started. However, it seems like a lot of the points that Bamboozled was making as a social commentary in film could be directed a lot at Chappelle's Show. I would be extremely interested to know what Spike Lee thinks of Chappelle's Show. Let me catch up on some of these. Okay. But yeah. So I think Spike Lee has drawn, Dave Chappelle has drawn pretty valid criticism from people in the past. He's always pushed people's buttons. He's always threaded that line of like offensive. And here I don't think he understands a little bit of what he's talking about because, and this is something you can watch like, better political streamers talk about, like Vosh or something. He essentially gave this take of Dave Chappelle in this special says that trans women are women, but he also talks about the idea that he's like Team TERF, right? And he talks about his support for J.K. Rowling. And if you're not familiar with J.K. Rowling and what she said about, essentially her ideology, talking about trans people, J.K. Rowling, what Dave Chappelle said, J.K. Rowling said, is that gender is real, right? He said that she just said gender is real, which is incorrect. J.K. Rowling said sex is real, right? And so here we have a little bit of a miscommunication, right? So sex and gender are two different things in the scientific, in every community, right? Sex is what we all know as that, like, essentially, what we scientifically know as the two different sexes, right? Sex is binary. There's two, right? Gender is a social, like a concept, right? So gender is expression. Gender is identity. Gender is a myriad of things that we can all put into various categories, right? So that's why we gender things like dogs and cats, right? So like we've had people where it's like you ever like walk around with a dog and your dog is a girl and somebody walks up to your dog and like, what's his name, right? Well, that's somebody gendering your dog. And I mean, it's kind of funny, right? Because like dogs don't really have a telltale sign one way or another of what gender they are. However, we in our social consciousness kind of gender dogs and cats as well. Now, this isn't a bad thing. I don't think anybody really cares, but that goes to show that gender is more of a like a concept versus a scientific fact, right? It fluctuates. That's why we have girls that we would call tomboys. That's why we have femboys. That's why we have everything that we know to be true, right? And so, yeah. Okay, see you later. Weeb. Vintage weeb. There we go. Yeah. But yeah, so that's kind of how we recognize gender, right? And so Dave Chappelle, so now we have miscommunications on various fronts here. So we have J.K. Rowling who said sex is real. We have, which J.K. Rowling saying sex is real is correct. Sex is real, but she was saying it in that she was saying the trans community doesn't think that sex is real, which isn't true. The trans community knows that sex is real. And then essentially J.K. Rowling uses that to push narratives about the trans community that just weren't true, right? And she was supporting a scientist who was discredited by her own community and not rehired for her job because she was pushing bad shit. And so Dave Chappelle represents J.K. Rowling's quote of sex is real to gender is real. Now, we know that gender and sex are two different things, so there's a little bit of a miscommunication there. On top of that, I don't think that Dave Chappelle has thoroughly thought through these positions, since in that same special, he talks about how trans women are women, and he talks about supporting trans people, right? So, okay. Yeah, whatever. And so, yeah, that's so that's our miscommunication here, right? So I think that I don't think Dave Chappelle, I honestly just don't think he understands some of this stuff. And I think this is also something that other people have talked about. I think that Dave Chappelle has a little bit of bias in that I think the LGBT community has really gotten on his nerves in terms of the online spaces that they're in, which is totally fair. Like, online spaces are incredibly fucking hard to be in. People harass you, they'll harangue you. We have a lot of shit like that, right? And so I think that Dave Chappelle has a little bit of a bias there that he wouldn't necessarily maybe have towards other communities while performing comedy, right? I think he's a little bit more fair to other communities. Identify as a mega wealthy person there. Okay, cool. We have that stuff. And so back to our story about I got so sidetracked with Netflix letting go this trans person. So there was a story flying around that there was a trans employee at Netflix who was let go over their tweets talking about their dislike of the new Chappelle special, and that Netflix was supporting it. And then they were let go. However, people kind of spread this story saying that this person was let go for that tweet when really they were let go for attending a meeting that they weren't approved to attend. They were, I think, later rehired, so I think that's all out of the way. So that's that's a story that was a little misrepresented, and therefore we just should probably talk about. But there are a lot of trans people at Netflix who have and even non-trans people who have just come out and stated, like, hey, I'm not really digging that Netflix is supporting this special, right? We're here. Netflix refuses to take the special down, which I'm mixed on if they should take the special down. I don't know. I think the special definitely veers towards normalizing this obvious hatred and harassment of the trans community, something we're currently seeing in my chat. But I think I feel like if Dave Chappelle were maybe a less popular comedian, this wouldn't necessarily be that big of a problem. But since Dave Chappelle is one of the biggest comedians in America, this is really blown up. So we're going to take a look at some of this stuff. So this is fairly recent. Netflix employees are staging a walkout amid Dave Chappelle controversy. So talk about that here. Okay. Netflix is resisting cancel culture. Oh, fuck. Netflix is resisting cancel culture by backing Dave Chappelle. Let's see.
Now it's your chance to invest like I do in companies that make things like this.
I don't want that. Just because sex is binary and they're bringing good biological difference. I agree. Cancel culture is stupid. However, we should approach these conversations with a little bit more levity, right? So, sex is binary, but gender isn't, right? That's what I was saying. I wasn't saying I think maybe you're conflating sex and gender. So I don't know. Maybe you have to look it up. Approximately 65 demonstrators, including Netflix employees and supporters of the transgender community, protested outside of the company's offices on Los Angeles on Wednesday. Employees began streaming out of the building at 10:30 a.m. PT in protest of Dave Chappelle's The Closer comedy special, which has been criticized as transphobic by the transgender communities and others. Demonstrators who spoke to CNN expressed their disappointment in Chappelle and the way Netflix has handled the controversy surrounding comments on his show. What comedians say in a comedy show does matter, and it does have real world consequences, Bridget Sampson said. I didn't have a problem with most of his humor, but to say gender is real and to align with TERFs, trans exclusionary radical feminists who want to deny the reality and existence of transgender people being the gender that they truly are in their mind and heart is very, very harmful. Sampson, who is not a Netflix employee and has a transgender daughter, said she only took issue with Chappelle proclaiming himself Team TERF. Okay. So the problem isn't saying, I guess the problem is saying gender is real, because that doesn't make sense. It's the term he's looking for, sex is real, right? And that's something that even trans people don't disagree with. Nobody disagrees with that. Sex is real. Gender isn't sex. I think that's the thing that people are arguing on. That's what I'm arguing with these people on. No one is flipping out when he makes jokes about women. I would argue that people do flip out about that. People flip out about misogynistic stuff all the time. Like, that's something that happens. But also, there isn't really like a hate group. So like TERF is classified by a lot of people as a hate group. Targeted towards trans people, especially in Britain. There's a lot of targeted hate crimes and attacks against trans people. Women, there isn't really like a hate group towards women, I guess, unless you count like, what are they called again? The male feminists. They're, oh my God, why am I blanking on it? The red pill people, but they're not a hate group. I don't think. I think they're just kind of lame. Women, like there's too many. It's half of our population are women. Like you're not really gonna have hate groups unless it's like, I guess, school shooters who are just super misogynistic. But usually they're also like racist. Usually they're also homophobic, whatever. So like trans people are just a much smaller like section, like community, than just like women. So therefore, yeah. Hatred towards women is a lot more discussed, and it's a lot more like, I think even Dave Chappelle would agree. Not even Dave Chappelle, I think, yeah, like he's talked about like in recent specials. There was that one, what was that special where he was sitting on a stool the whole time? He was talking about, he told that story of him carrying a bag of money around and how that would feel like, how women feel all the time when, he's like, it felt exactly like having a pussy, where it like, if anybody knew I had this on me, I would be attacked, it would be taken, all this other stuff. So Dave Chappelle has like, even in his own stand-up, has demonstrated an understanding of women's issues that he hasn't demonstrated in trans issues. So, no. No. And also, like I was saying earlier, Dave Chappelle's jokes about trans people seem to be coming from a little bit more of a malicious place. Or maybe not malicious. I don't want to say they're malicious. I want to say that they're like, I want to say that they're just coming from a less like fucking around place, right? Like all of his jokes about other groups, I feel like he's just kind of like, he's just joking, right? But like when it comes to the trans shit, I think he's coming from a little bit more of a true place that isn't all just joking. Just from how he presents it in his comedy. It seems like he has a lot of hurt there. It seems like he has a lot of resentment, especially since you can clearly tell that in his work, he talks about the, LGBT community getting a lot more, essentially making a lot more progress in their fight for their rights than maybe even the black community. And it seems like he has a lot of resentment surrounding that issue, especially. So I think his criticisms or his jokes about the trans community come from a much truer place than his jokes about women. All right, let's keep reading. Matthew Brock, or whatever, protesting in support of Netflix employees, told CNN he's extremely disappointed in Netflix for giving Chappelle a platform. Everyone should have a voice. I believe in free speech, but I also believe that words are harmful. Words can lead to violence. This is not only about people's feelings getting hurt or political correctness. This is about the threats of violence that people in the trans community face every single day. Yeah, I mean, so this is tough because I haven't seen the special, so I don't know all of the exact wording. I've just heard it kind of secondhand. So it's difficult to, I guess it's difficult to parse if like what Chappelle said actually translates to hate speech or not. I don't think it does. I think he was mostly telling jokes. But I will say, yeah, I think like, especially we were having these conversations, earlier on about, the, Asian American hate crimes, how jokes can lead to normalizations of, specific ideas. And how those ideas can, lead people to, act out of violence or whatever. And I mean, like I mentioned before, we see a lot of that in Britain. There's a lot of hate crimes there surrounding the trans community because the TERFs there are a little bit more prevalent. Yeah. Okay. Chappelle's special comes during a historic year for anti-transgender legislation, introduced in at least 33 states, and less than a year after a record high number of transgender people, most of them trans women of color, were killed. That's another thing that Chappelle doesn't address. So I know he talks about the progressiveness of the LGBT community in this most recent special and the versus the progression of the black community. But he's talked about that in other specials that I have seen. And it is kind of crazy to me because I do, like, every time he talks about this stuff, I always think, like, is he aware that there are so many trans people that are black, that are Hispanic, that are Asian, like every other fucking race, right? Like there's trans people of every nationality, every race, like holy fuck. So it is a little weird and I think a little manipulative because I think he's pretty fucking aware of that fact. It'd be hard not to be. So yeah, I think, he talks about trans people as if they're all like white college students, which they're not. Here we see that most trans people who have been killed are, women of color. A lot of those trans people tend to be sex workers, which are a lot fucking worse off than Chappelle. And so, yeah, I don't love... No, I actively dislike that Chappelle represents the trans community as just like a bunch of like white, a bunch of like rich white people playing dress up or whatever. These often, a lot of trans people are like very lower class people. A lot of them are sex workers. A lot of people in the trans community do genuinely fear for their lives every day. So, Netflix employees and organizers calling themselves Team Trans are asking for more trans and non-binary individuals in executive level positions at Netflix and want the company to create a fund to support trans and non-binary talent. Okay. According to The Verge, they're missing an A. Yeah, I mean, I definitely support the, creating a fund for trans and non-binary talent. And having, and having more diversity in executive level positions. More diversity creates more diverse content. When you have a more diverse people in, making those executive decisions, you get a more diverse content base, which just makes things more interesting. It makes our entertainment more interesting. So, Yeah, like we should be pushing for that, regardless of all this Chappelle stuff. So, Netflix co-CEO Ted Sarandos has not addressed the demonstration, but did tell Variety in an interview published Tuesday that he screwed up when it came to how he handled criticism of the special. I screwed up that internal communication, Sarandos told the publication. I did that and I screwed it up. I screwed it up in two ways. First and foremost, I should have led with a lot more humanity, meaning I had a group of employees who were definitely feeling pain and hurt from a decision we made. And I think that needs to be acknowledged up front before you get into the nuts and bolts of everything. I didn't do that. That was uncharacteristic for me, and it was moving fast, and we were trying to answer some really specific questions that were floating. We landed with some things that were much more blanket and matter of fact that are not all at all accurate. Okay. First and foremost. Yeah, I guess I'm curious what his initial reaction was. I think, was he the one who talked about like Netflix is just like keeping up the special or whatever? Yeah, I mean, in that position, Netflix isn't going to take down. Well, I guess, I mean, the employees are staging a walkout. I guess we could see a future where they do take it down. But yeah, I guess if he had like come out and I was going to say something, but like by posting the special, Netflix does pretty much condone what Chappelle says here. Like, you can't really post something like a new thing and like be like, oh, but we don't condone what's said here, right? Like, I don't know. Like, there's like Disney Plus where like they post the old films on there, but they have like the warnings beforehand where it's like, hey, a lot of this stuff isn't like representative of our views today, but that's like, over films like fucking Dumbo, where it's like they came out in the 40s and shit. Maybe they could do something like that with comedians that are maybe don't represent the views of the company, but I don't think that would help too much. The only ones threatening at the protests were the trans activists. There's footage. No counter protesters were violent. So who was violent? Yeah, it's not about the volume of people who are being killed. It's the fact that these are targeted killings of trans people, right? Like, wait, you can't compare just like number, like there's so many more black people and there's so many more women than like trans people, right? So we can't just compare numbers. That's not how this works. You have to compare like who's being targeted, right? Like, of course more black people and more women are going to be killed every year because there's just more of them. But yeah, yeah, I haven't seen the footage of the protest. I never said that anybody was being violent. I don't know where that came from. After Chappelle's special debuted on Netflix at October 5th, Sarandos acknowledged Chappelle's provocative language in an emails to staff obtained by Variety, but defended the platform's commitment to artistic freedom and said the special didn't cross the line to incite violence. Oh, okay. Is this what you're talking about with, the violence? We have a strong belief that content on screen doesn't translate into real-world harm, Sarandos wrote. Okay. So, that is true. Content on screen doesn't usually translate to real-world harm, unless it's something like fucking Birth of a Nation. Which, I mean, it has to be really bad to do that. And I don't think the Chappelle special is that bad. What content does do is, so, especially now, we equate the content we consume so heavily with the brands that produce it, right? So like it used to be that I feel like movies or really anything that was produced by a company, people wouldn't really trace it back that far to like make that an overall criticism of the company. Maybe they would, but I feel like now with social media, there's a lot more of that line that's drawn back. So like I feel like 50 years ago, if Netflix had produced this Dave Chappelle stand-up special, first of all, these jokes wouldn't have been that controversial. But let's say we had done a lot of progression, just not in technology. Then I feel like a lot of this stuff wouldn't be necessarily blowing back on Netflix as much as it would just be Chappelle himself. But anyways, so what I'm saying here is content doesn't translate to real world harm. That is true. However, what it does do is it empowers and emboldens people with those same views, right? So now we have a ton of people who see Netflix producing this stuff and are like, hey, like Netflix is kind of on our side, right? Like they agree with us, which they don't. Netflix doesn't have an opinion one way or another. Netflix is a company. They're going to produce things that make money. Netflix would have produced a Chappelle special regardless if he talked about trans people or not. I think most people are aware of that, though. What content does do is it normalizes. And so we see what we see day to day in our lives that determines what things are acceptable in the society that we live in. So, and there are plenty of studies about that. So while let's talk about maybe video games, right? So there is, I've seen in my own personal life, just get anecdotal about this. My little brother started cussing a lot more in his personal life after he started playing fucking online video games, right? Like when he started, so it used to be when he would get angry or upset or anything, maybe would yell at each other, whatever. But it'd be whatever. It'd be like a normal fight. And then he started playing Gears of War online. And anytime he would get just a little bit pissed off, it doesn't even have to be straight up mad. He would start using all these fucking terms. He would just start he would just start cussing a lot. He would just be like, fuck you, you fucking, whatever. Yeah, he would be like, fuck you, fucking pussy, something shit like that. And it's like, whoa, dude, you used to never talk like this. I'm like, what happened? And eventually I pieced it together, just walking by his room. He was playing video games and that's how he was talking, right? And he plays this shit every day. He plays it for hours, right? And so he's constantly talking shit online. People are talking shit back. And so, yeah, that gets normalized, right? And so now if he goes into a conversation and there's a little bit of a a difference or just some sort of disagreement, he's way more likely to go off the cuff and start using language like that because it's gotten so normalized in his own head. So how we the content we consume and how we consume it really does impact how we engage in regular life. That's also why you have so many young kids who don't know how to fucking talk to people because or they just use a bunch of terms that older people don't understand because they're incredibly online. So there's kids who spend their whole lives on TikTok and Twitter, and when they go out into conversations with people who don't do that, nobody knows what the fuck they're talking about, right? And that's because they have this whole world of content that they engage in on a day-to-day basis that somebody somebody the people I serve at the cafe I work at would have no fucking idea what they're talking about. Or if I were to say hey, can I red pill you on this thing? Somebody I would serve is dude, what? You want to red pill me? What does that even mean? Man, just shit like that. It really does determine how we engage with the world. So, okay. Let's keep going. CNN has not independently verified the emails from Sarandos. When reached by CNN last week, a spokesperson for Netflix said, our employees are encouraged to disagree openly and we support their right to do so. GLAAD, the LGBTQ media advocacy organization, voiced concern about Chappelle's comments. the closer and pushed back on the position Sarandos took in his notes to staff. GLAAD was founded 36 years ago because media representation has consequences for LGBTQ people. Authentic media stories about LGBTQ lives have been cited as directly responsible for increasing public support for issues like marriage equality. True. GLAAD said in a statement to CNN last week, but film and TV have also been filled with stereotypes and misinformation about us for decades, leading to real-world harm, especially for trans people and LGBTQ people of color. Ironically, the documentary Disclosure on Netflix demonstrates this quite clearly. This just goes to show that Netflix doesn't really have, like, any stake in this. Well, I mean, they have stake in this, but, like, Netflix doesn't themselves as a company doesn't have an opinion on this. They'll publish a documentary about the harm that media does to the LGBT community and not even blink posting or doing this Dave Chappelle special where he talks negatively about the trans community. So, like, yeah, whatever. And also, yeah, film and TV has been filled with stereotypes and misinformation about gay people for decades. You can see this. I mean, if you go back, there's so many videos about this on YouTube. If you go back throughout, television and film history, there's a lot of stereotypes about, the LGBT community. A lot of them are, even in Disney movies, there's a lot of like queer coded characters who are like villains, right? Same thing with like stuff like Psycho or stuff like, what's that one where they try to hide the body, the two dudes? I don't know. They're very queer-coded characters, right? And so, like, historically, like, gay people have been villains. Gay people have been, creepy. Gay people have been whatever in film. Sorry. Should have specified. But yeah, so, and that does lead to people's conceptions of gay people in real life. Comedian Hannah Gadsby also criticized the response from Sarandos, which referenced her own Netflix special. Hey, Ted Sarandos. Just a quick note to let you know that I would prefer if you didn't drag my name into your mess, she tweeted. Now I have to deal with even more of the hate and anger that Dave Chappelle's fans like to unleash on me every time Dave gets $20 million to process his emotionally stunted partial worldview. She phrased that so well. I have not seen a Hannah Gadsby special. I know I've been meaning to check it out. Oh man. Yeah, like, it is like, his worldview is, like, incredibly flawed. It is emotionally stunted. Yeah, it's emotionally stunted partial worldview, like she said. I don't know if he does any of this maliciously. I just think he just doesn't have an understanding, and his emotions are getting in the way of his understanding of these issues. I think, yeah, like, Chappelle just really, like, I hope he's able to learn, and, like, I hope somebody is able to sit him down and talk to him about this shit. 3 Netflix employees were suspended amid the controversy for attending an executive-level meeting without permission. They were subsequently reinstated. One employee was fired last week for sharing confidential, commercially sensitive information about the special to Bloomberg. We understand this employee may have been motivated by disappointment and hurt with Netflix, but maintaining a culture of trust and transparency is core to our company, Netflix spokesperson said. Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. If somebody's, like, leaking or sharing confidential information, regardless of what it's about, and they're probably going to get fired. So, okay. Well, there we have it. That's our Chappelle. That's our Chappelle story. Netflix employees are staging their walkout. We're going to see how this goes down. I am not really invested in if they take down the special one way or another. Mostly in that I think the damage has been done, like, in terms of, like, our conversation as a culture. I don't know. I guess if they do take down the special, it'll set a precedent, right? I'm just Yeah, I guess I'm just kind of, between views on, platforming, edgy content versus hateful content. But I understand also that the LGBT community, specifically the trans community, isn't really in much of a position to handle much edgy content. I think like if the trans community had a little bit of an easier time in society, as as we in society, like, let's say in like 20 years from now, then we could have, more edgy jokes, as, with, women or anything like that. Which, I mean, those can still be, even jokes about women or, black people or, any other group can still be like problematic. I just think that, right now we're in a very fragile place as a society. And, I think that there's a lot of there are a lot of conversations to be had, and there's a lot of just a lot of shit we need to talk about before we get too comfortable with with these jokes and shit. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. So if they take that in the special, good for them. Good for the people protesting it. I think, yeah, I'm gonna say, yeah, I'm supportive of that. I need to watch the special. I need to, see for myself before I guess maybe that's why I'm a little bit more reserved in my opinion of it. I don't like making statements about things that I haven't seen yet. So, yeah, we have that. Let's move on to our next thing to talk about. So, wait, give me a sec. Okay, that's what I wanted. Sorry. Okay, so DC Fandom happened. So I'm still recovering. So this is my first time streaming where I've had like chatters who like, yeah, just like who I didn't know previously. So I'm still just I'm trying to get my brain from like a contentious thing to a non-contentious thing, because like DC Fandom is gonna, well, actually no, I've seen people who get pretty fucking hype about this shit. Anyways, DC Fandom happened recently, and I know there's a bunch of stuff that's come out with it, and so yeah, we have a bunch of this, and I need to check out some of these trailers. I haven't I think I saw the Batman one, but I need to watch the rest. So let's see. Let me find a good link here. Okay, DC Fandom, all trailers and clips. So, oh fuck. Oh, this is just a thing for everything. Okay. All right. Wow. Do we want to go through everything, or do we just want to go through the main things? I don't know what I should be doing. Okay. Well, let's what are YouTube's rules about reacting to oh wait, no, fuck you. Sorry, I'm just gonna look something up real quick. What are YouTube's rules? I should have looked this up beforehand. What are YouTube rules for? There we go. I just want to see. So I'm reading stuff here. Okay. Alright, I'm just gonna react to this shit. Okay, so we have, I think this is the Flash trailer? So I haven't actually seen this trailer yet. It's my understanding that, no, okay, so first and foremost, I should address that I am not like a huge DC person. I used to be more of a Marvel person. Now I'm just not much of a superhero person in general. I can still get into the movies and stuff. I'm just like, when it comes to like hype and like, you know, all this trailer shit or whatever, I just it's hard for me to maintain excitement for all of these things. You know, not to sound too whatever about it. It's just one of those things where it's just like, fuck, dude. Okay, like we have more superheroes. Like these kind of all bleed together at some point, and like, you know, you can still get excited about it, and I do still get excited about these projects, but like, I get way more excited about like really original, interesting projects that like people get attached to. So you know, like I got like super excited about like Mahershala Ali is doing this movie later this year called Swan Song. It's like a sci-fi movie about like he like clones himself or something. Mahershala Ali is like one of my favorite actors right now, and I love him. I think the fact that he's doing kind of like an indie sci-fi is really cool, and so I'm like way more hyped for that than like any of this shit, right? And so just because it sounds cool, it's by people I really respect. And granted, like, there's a lot of people I respect in these movies. We'll get to the Batman here in a little bit, but, like, I love Robert Pattinson. But anytime I learn that, like, a director I really like is working on, like, one of these big-budget superhero movies, my heart breaks a little bit because I feel like there's probably some, like, more interesting stuff they could have probably been working on. So, for example, like Ryan Coogler, when I learned he was doing Black Panther, it was like, oh man, that's like really cool that he's doing, you know, one of these huge superhero movies. But also, I feel like I would love to see something that's just like more his voice. I really loved Creed, and Fruitvale Station was also like great. And so, you know, just stuff like that. Or, like, I'm really excited to see Sam Raimi direct a Doctor Strange movie. However, like, will they let him be as stylistic as he ever was with Spider-Man or Evil Dead or there was that movie The Gift that he did? Like, I don't know. Like The Gift is a fucking weird movie. Evil Dead 2 is a fucking weird movie. Spider-Man in places is really weird. I really love the campiness of it. It's, you know, his Spider-Man's movies are my favorite movies of the Spider-Man, you know, all the Spider-Man movies. So yeah, I was just get bummed out about, you know, directors like doing stuff like this. Because it feels like they're doing it in place of an original project. Anyways, not to rag on superhero movies too much. Yeah, I'll watch some of the shit. So here is The Flash.
Tell me something. You can go anywhere you want, right? Any timeline. Any universe.
Ooh. Oh, okay. One thing. I haven't seen Justice League or Zack Snyder's Justice League. So I have not seen Ezra Miller as the Flash besides that like 2-second thing he did in Batman v Superman. Okay. This is looking kind of neat.
Fight to save this one. You changed the future.
Ooh.
And you changed the past.
Ooh, I like his outfit there. They look kind of cool. Look a little bit like Daredevil. Uh-oh. What's happening? Is that Batman?
Are you in?
Yeah, are you in? You in? Bro? Okay.
A new Biden administration policy allows middle-class Americans
Wait, how do
to
I...
save thousands.
I don't want that. Okay. Okay, so was that the big reveal? Is that the thing where like everybody applauded like at DC Fandom or whatever? Was DC Fandom a live event or was it just kind of like an online thing? Cool. Which version of Batman's going to be in this one? Is it I think it's Ben Affleck's, right? I think it's Ben Affleck's. Well, that'll be fun, I'm sure. This probably has to be the lamest reaction where it's like versus somebody who's like really, really invested in this. So get ready for my lukewarm reactions. Actually, what's next? Oh, wait. There's more. Wait, what was it? Oh, this is the Batman. I actually really am excited for this one. Okay, I take back everything I said before. Paul Dano. I'm so excited to see him as the Riddler. Dude, I'm excited to see all these actors in all of these roles. Like, ooh, this is cool. Haha. Yeah.
Fear is a tool. But when that light hits the sky,
Dude.
it's not just a call.
I'm so excited for Robert Pattinson as Batman. I really, really, really hope that they lean into this, like, Batman as, like a rich kid mental case. Like, the fact that he's, like, I mean, this is, like, deranged behavior, right? Like, everybody knows this, right? Like, Batman is, like, I mean, he's a little fucked up in the head. I really hope they lean into the weirder aspects of Batman in this, like the darker aspects.
It's a warning.
Oh, come on.
I've been trying to reach you.
I've been trying to reach you. Damn.
This is about a king. And Riddler's the match.
I can take care of myself.
Dude, Zoe Kravitz's Catwoman, that'd be fucking cool. Her, I know this is a weird performance to pull out, but her performance in Dope, I feel like she was like sexy and cool there, like, and so I feel like when they announced she was cast as Catwoman, I immediately thought of that performance for whatever reason. But yeah, I'm excited about her.
If this continues, it won't be long before you've nothing left.
I don't care what happens to me.
It's only gonna get worse for you.
Oh. Take it easy. All right.
Hear everything they say, ain't you?
Maybe we're not so different. Who are you under there?
Goddamn.
I'm vengeance.
I'm vengeance.
What's black?
Whoa, that's a really cool shot. Oh my god. Look at that. I really like him all dirty like that. Like, that's so fun. Man, what's the director of this one? Is it Matt Reeves? Is that who it is? I think it was Matt Reeves. Or am I thinking of the other Planet of the Apes director? I know it was one of the directors of the trilogy of Planet of the Apes. I might be thinking of the wrong one. Whichever one. I know it's the one who directed Dawn and War, and those are such good movies. Those are like the Planet of the Apes trilogy, like this newest one, are like some of my favorite like blockbuster films to come out in like the past like decade. They're just so interesting and like they're so dark and like just gritty and like I don't know, but like the characters were so interesting. I know now I'm just like talking about Planet of the Apes, but like holy shit, let's talk about that for a second. Like the villain of I forget the evil ape's name, but in Dawn he was like one of my favorite villains ever, and like Caesar was such an interesting character. I love that like most of the movie was like at least with Dawn, well I guess in War as well, where like they followed the apes. Like there were human characters, but like you could argue that like in Rise of the Planet of the Apes, you know, James Franco is the main character, but I love that they just switched to the apes and that most of the movie was